This grass tile is for mold number 284, and the earth and rock is from mold number 283. Now here are the paints and materials you're going to need to paint the dirt, rock, and grass combination onto your floor tiles here. First thing we're going to need is we're going to need a dirt color of paint, and I have the recipe on the website as how to make the dirt color of paint. We're also going to need the light earth color of paint. That recipe is also on the website. These are both flat latex house paint. Now from the art store, you're also going to need some inks. This one is India ink. It's green, and it's actually called grass green. And this ink is a brown ink called Sepia ink. This is also a matte fluid medium. In other words, what this is, it's matte, means it dries, not glossy, but dries matte. It's fluid, which means it's fluid, kind of like heavy cream. And it's a medium, which means it's a glue that actually will glue pigment to the canvas. So that's what this liquid here is. This will help us make a really nice ink wash to go over top. You're also going to need some water. You're going to need some little cups for mixing. You're going to need some tablespoon measures, and then paper towels and something to cover your work surface so that you don't get paint everywhere. And the brush I recommend is probably at least a 3/4 inch wide, very soft bristled brush. Find the softest one you can find, and our dry brushing will end up a lot nicer if you can find a nice, soft, good art brush. Now I do want to mention a couple of things about the ink. First of all, when I was looking at the art store, this ink is grass green. At first I looked at a type of ink that was just regular green. I thought, well, green is what I want for grass. But when I looked closer at this green ink didn't look green at all. I was looking at this stuff and I was opening it up and it's like, that's green? That looks blue. It really? Seriously? That's supposed to be green ink? I mean, I guess it is kind of ink. You know, you can take it and put it on something, and yeah, that's sort of green, but it's kind of a blue green, isn't it? It doesn't really remind me of a grass green sort of ink. What I would suggest is getting some yellow ink as well. And I would mix, one part of this green to one part of yellow, and it will give you pretty much the grass green that we have here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to paint this whole thing with our dirt color of paint. But when you get the dirt color of paint mixed up, this is house paint. Straight house paint is a little thick. If you paint it on just like this, chances are it's not going to go down into all the cracks. So we're going to have to mix this with a little bit of water. I would suggest 2 part paints to 1 part water in order to do this. Oh my God, I'm going to make a mess. There we go. And let's wipe that up. Okay, so there's like 2 parts paint, and then I'm just going to go 1 part water. That looks pretty good. And then we're going to mix that up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to go ahead and paint it on. And you want to make sure that this gets down onto all the cracks. Well, that's almost the same color as the cardboard I'm painting on here. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mix up a wash to go over tops of the rocks and the grass. Now this one is going to be a brown wash, so what we're going to do is we're going to use the Sepia ink and the matte fluid medium. And the recipe is fairly simple. 1 part matte fluid medium and 1 part Sepia ink, and that's it. That's the whole wash that we're going to put on here. So to do this, one thing I want to mention about Sepia ink is that it seems to settle in the bottom whenever you use it. So what I would suggest you do before you use the Sepia ink, take a long-handled paintbrush or something, and then dig around in there and kind of move that brush around and try to get the sediment up. It's especially, you want to do that if you got a new bottle, because if you don't, the first ink that you get is going to be really thin, and as you get further down in the bottle, the ink is going to get thicker and thicker. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure equal parts of each. So this is the matte fluid medium, and I'm just going to use, for this little tile, I'm just going to use a tablespoon. Actually, this is a teaspoon, I think. I'm just going to do a teaspoon of the matte fluid medium, and then I'm going to use a teaspoon of the Sepia ink. Okay. And that should be it right about there. And I'm going to take this right here and I'm going to mix this up. Now one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video as far as equipment is baby wipes. Of course you can use just paper towels, you don't have to have baby wipes, but I had these on hand anyway. So what we've got here is we've got the ink wash we mixed up, and I've got my paintbrush, and we're going to just apply it liberally all over the whole thing, even the grass. Okay, so we're just going to dip it in here, and what I mixed up is enough to do this tile, but probably not too much more. So if you've got several tiles, you know, kind of mix up what you need accordingly. And we're just going to cover this whole thing, and when you first apply it, it looks like you're just applying brown paint. You know, this is kind of a thick wash. It's not exactly, the matte fluid medium thickens it up a little bit. And we're going to take this baby wipe, and we're going to very gently just kind of dab up a little bit. And you don't want to dab up too much because you don't want to remove too of this. This is supposed to be dark. This is supposed to be the dark part. These are all the shadows that are going down, and we're going to be lightening this up later on. So on the grass, I'm not really as concerned about, you know, you can just blot up a little bit. But on the rocks, you know, kind of be, you don't want to get too much. You want to just, you know, leave it like that. And then you'll notice as it sits there, that ink, it doesn't look like it, but it actually is running down into the cracks, okay? So it's actually doing its job that it needs to do. Okay, for this next step, we're going to use the earth tone light color. It's a very light cream color, and we want to be extremely careful when we use this. We just want to barely get any paint on this. So what I'm doing is I'm wiping it off until there's absolutely almost nothing left in the brush. Be sure you start off with a brush that's really bone dry. Okay, now when you start putting this on, especially on the rocks, the grass I'm not as worried about, but the rocks really is going to make a difference. You want to very gently go over top of it. Just very gently drag that brush over top of it. And if you don't see anything happening, that's a good sign. You don't want anything to be happening the first few brush strokes. If you see paint coming out when you brush over it, get that excess wiped off of that brush. So, I mean, I can actually see a few little dots of paint that happen just lightly brushing over it, and that's kind of a troubling sign. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gently dry brush over it, and that looks like it's going on pretty good. That looks like it's going on pretty good. So, just very lightly, and it looks like I'm starting to get a few things. You can see the rock starting to pick up. See it happening there, and remember, we're going over the grass too. The grass we will end up going over a little more aggressively, but what we want is we want to see all those little details and blades of grass come out. We will tint them green when we get done, but for the moment what we're trying to do is we're just trying to pick up the highlights on here. So I'm going to go over it. Now what you want to do is you want to probably use short strokes. I would just go little strokes like this and try to hit each square. Try to bring out the details in each square. I think at this point I still have a little too much paint. Little too much paint in my paintbrush. Because this is what we're going to see for the final on the rocks. I mean, what you end up with when you're done is what you get in the end. So you want this to be, you want to take your time and you want all of this dirt to come out. We don't want too much white. So it looks like I hit it a little bit heavy right there. So I might need to wipe off more. It's like, didn't I wipe off enough paint already? But apparently not. Okay, so I'm going to get down in. I'm picking up most of that. Now I'm going to get some of the excess off of my brush by hitting the grass. So I am pushing a little bit harder on the grass over here. See how I'm doing that? I'm pushing down, I'm kind of rotating the brush back and forth, and you'll find this grass texture when it comes out, it kind of reminds you a little bit of hay. Now you don't want to fill it in, because there's a couple of places here that looks like they're maybe starting to fill in a little bit. And there are actually little leaves and other little details in this grass tile that you don't really see at first, but the dry brushing will pick it up. So I'm going to hit the grass just a little more aggressively here. And you notice I have not picked up paint back in my paintbrush off of the paper towel yet. In fact, I don't think I'm going to need to for this particular one. So basically, as I'm kind of going across and I'm hitting it a little more heavy, you see it's not quite as easy to distinguish between the grass tile and the dirt and rock tile, because you know I'm hitting a little bit heavy on the grass tile. I want that brown to show through. So it looks like I am just about there. I think I'm going to get a little more paint off on my paintbrush from the paper towel, and I'm going to kind of jab straight down into this grass. I don't want a lot of dark brown showing through. I really want lots of shades of light brown on that grass. I really want lots of shades of light brown. So that's why I'm continuing to go over and over this grass. This grass is going to be much darker once we use the grass wash. So if it's extremely light, if you look at the grass and you go, man, that looks like really light white grass, it's okay because it's going to be stained, and you'll wish you had done it lighter if you don't make it, really light now. Now the grass wash recipe is 2 parts of matte fluid medium, 2 parts of the grass green India ink, 1 part of sepia India ink. Okay, I'm thinking I have just enough left in the bottle to do this of the sepia India ink. Let's hope. So what I'm going to do, 2 parts of matte fluid medium, and this helps the ink kind of flow down into the cracks. It also gives it a matte finish because a lot of times inks actually are fairly glossy. We need 2 parts of this grass green. There's 1, there's 2, and let's do our 1 part sepia. Let's see if we've got enough left in this bottle to do this. Okay, I'm going to need a little bit more. I've got some over here that I used for something else, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. There we go. So that's pretty much it, and you want to stir that up. Whoa, almost hit my thing with it. And you're going to see that that brown, what it does is it really mutes that color up a bit. And so this is more of a good hunter green is what this is. And it looks pretty dark, but it's going to show through. All of those little highlights on the grass are going to show through when we put it on. Okay, so let's just apply this liberally to the grass area. And you can see that it will actually go down into the cracks, and it's a pretty nice green. Now we're going to kind of go over top and try to not make it so obvious that we've got kind of a square texture on here, but we will be able to kind of clean that up with a baby wipe when we get done, so we can kind of blend it in just a little bit better than what we had. So basically that's it. That's pretty much the grass, and it's like, wow, that's pretty green. You realize that all of the texture and everything is coming out. You wouldn't believe that green would be quite so green. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, and since we want that brown to show through a little bit, what we're going to do is we're going to take the baby wipe, and we're going to lightly kind of daub this up a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of do it in patches, and you see that's going to kind of lighten that up a little bit. And the places that we lighten up are going to be a little browner because there's actually brown showing through. And that gives a little bit more of a natural look. So we're going to just kind of dab that just a little bit. And the edge that we've got here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wipe it pretty well. I'm going to kind of wipe it up on that edge. You see how we got sort of a sharp edge of color right here? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that and I'm going to wipe it up just a little bit. So that should kind of blend it out a little bit better. With this baby wipe, we can kind of do that and not get such a sharp edge on the grass there. Now here's a sample of the combination after it's painted. And you can tell there's really not a big difference. There is no reason for a transition tile because the painting pretty much blends the two together where it doesn't look like Minecraft. It doesn't look pixelized chunks. It actually is pretty natural by using our painting method. So transition tiles really aren't needed to go from grass to dirt and rock.